Good evening, welcome to this special edition of The Nation. We are coming to you tonight live from Parliament House in Canberra, where it has been a dramatic day in federal politics. The Prime Minister has held on to her job despite a leadership spill. In the end, there was no other challenger. Despite all the talk, the rumour, the speculation, the build-up in recent weeks, Kevin Rudd at the end of the day did not put up his hand. Minutes before the caucus meeting where the leadership was thrown open, he declared, the former Prime Minister, that he would not be contesting. He said it was because he was being good to his word, that he had promised not to challenge and wasn't doing so. But as his supporters have pointed out, he just didn't have the numbers. He came close, they argue, but no cigar, not enough numbers to get the majority needed in caucus today. So the Prime Minister was the only nominee, as was Wayne Swan as Deputy Leader, both holding onto their jobs. And now Labor, right across the divide, trying to patch things up, show some form of unity and get back to the job of trying to turn things around with less than 6 months to go until the election. Already today we've seen Simon Crean resign from the front bench and go to the back bench after he pulled the trigger on this earlier in the afternoon, saying there needed to be a leadership ballot, there needed to be a change from Julia Gillard to Kevin Rudd. We've also seen tonight on Sky News, Richard Marles confirm that he has resigned as a junior member of the front bench after he too, earlier in the day here on Sky News, confirmed that he was supporting a comeback for Kevin Rudd. Well, he's fallen on his sword this evening. Tonight we're joined by another victim of this dramatic day for Labor. We're starting with Ed Husic. He's a government whip and has been a strong supporter of Kevin Rudd. He joins me now. Ed Husic, thanks for your time.
Evening.
You've decided to resign as whip tonight?
Yes, I have. I mean, the whip's positions basically have an important role to play in terms of assisting the party on the floor of the House, and they have a role to play in terms of maintaining order and the functioning of the party. Joel Fitzgibbon did the right thing, which I want to thank him for today, because he couldn't necessarily make the decision to resign on the spot and not consult with Janelle Saffin and myself as whips. And what we'll be doing, given our roles as whips, is that we'll be submitting our resignations to take effect from the next caucus meeting. What that allows for is transition and stability in the coming weeks as well. But from my perspective, it's the right thing to do because, frankly, look, people know I've been friends with Kevin for many years, and I don't want ambiguity or question marks hanging over my position. I think on principle this is the right thing to do, and also from a perspective of allowing me to pursue policy interests that I feel strongly about, that we should, in the interest of getting this all cleared out and moving on, that we do that given the Prime Minister's emphatic re-endorsement today. So
just to confirm what you've announced here tonight, yourself and Janelle Saffin as whips and Joel Fitzgibbon as Chief Government Whip will all resign effective from the next parliamentary sitting.
That's correct. And so, as I said, what that allows for is that it allows stability in the transition over the next few weeks. Whips do have a role in between sittings, and in particular Joel as the Chief Whip. And that's why I'm grateful that he took the opportunity to talk with us first rather than effectively forcing our hand earlier this afternoon.
I asked this question of Richard Marles this afternoon, and I want to ask you, as someone who, as you say, has been close to Kevin Rudd, do you feel you were hung out to dry by Kevin Rudd today when he did not put his hand up to contest the leadership?
Absolutely not. I think time will show that Kevin did the right thing as well. There is no point going into a ballot, and this has sort of been part of our New South Wales right upbringing as well, where you're going to lose. If you were going to go into that ballot in that way, all you would have done was cause division. And I think that the right thing has been done to allow for stability.
So he just didn't have the numbers?
Well, look, he just made an assessment. You heard his words today. He said that unless there was an overwhelming position of requiring or requesting that he do that job, that would be the basis on which he did it. And I think it's important that we not go through that level of scarring.
But this is bizarre, isn't it? I mean, after all we've heard and seen in the last few weeks, for Kevin Rudd not to put up his hand and contest this, something clearly went wrong. Why wasn't he more active in making sure the numbers were there?
Because he'd maintained a position he wouldn't challenge, and for him to do what you're suggesting in your question would have been to basically do otherwise, and I just think that that's not right.
This wouldn't have been a challenge. Julia Gillard threw the leadership open.
No, but at the same time too, he said that he would he would not challenge, and that it was on the basis that people approached him to do the job, and the PM indicated her intention to stand again, as the Deputy PM did, and so that was that.
Nonetheless, are you disappointed that he and others didn't do more to make the change happen?
Well, I go back to my words. I mean, Kevin said he wouldn't challenge, so fundamentally I'm proud of the position that he took, that said he wouldn't. He maintained his position. I think credibility and leadership and sticking to those things that you say you'll do is important, and he did that.
So today hasn't damaged Kevin Rudd in your view?
I don't think so. Well, look, in my eyes, it hasn't. And like I said, I don't walk away from friends. I stick with them. I also believe strongly in my own principles in terms of the jobs that I'm doing, and I just think that this is the right thing to do.
Is his ambition, desire, possibility of ever returning to the leadership now over?
I'm not about making predictions or whatever. I think what everyone has been saying today is we've got to get on with the job of governing, and that's exactly what everyone is focused on doing.
So will Julia Gillard stay as leader until the election?
Well, you've heard today, and I believe so, that people basically want this issue settled, and that it should just now allow for governing.
What does that mean, though? Does it mean that everything will stop, the background chatter, the speculation, the soundings, will all of that stop?
I believe so.
So will you throw your weight wholeheartedly behind Julia Gillard?
Well, this is my motivation in terms of what I'm indicating to you tonight, and what the other two whips are indicating that they'll do, so that there is no ambiguity, so that we can basically clear the decks, so to speak, and move on.
Do you believe that Julia Gillard can win the next election?
Yes, I think with people working in that direction and trying to be able to create the contrast between what we stand for and what the other side will do, I think that's what you've got to do.
Would Labor stand a better chance of winning and stopping Tony Abbott becoming Prime Minister with Kevin Rudd?
Well, I think that's all speculation and hypothesis. It just matters for naught.
But this
David.
is what Labor MPs need to weigh, don't they?
But this matters for naught. The decision has been taken today. The caucus has made its position clear. We move on.
Where do you think Labor and the Prime Minister have gone wrong to get to this situation, where once again these divisions have been opened up, where you're in a tough spot in the polls, where the public are viewing you as a divided mess? Where has Labor gone wrong?
I don't see that there's any point in terms of trawling through the entrails now, David. I mean, for us to go through this retrospective, I don't know really what it does to help. I think
but surely it's about identifying
focus.
the problem if you're going to find a solution.
Okay, but if I can just make this point, we focus on effectively the events of this afternoon, where the caucus has taken a position. The caucus has emphatically said this is where it wants things to head, and so now we move from that point. Going back to my words a few moments ago, David, for me to go into a retrospective, I just don't think is productive.
But surely it matters, doesn't it? If you're going to turn things around, you need to acknowledge where the problem is and try and fix it.
Yeah, and I've said through the week there could have been things that had been done differently and better. For example, I was on the show yesterday with Kieran saying that in terms of the media reforms themselves, yeah, sure, there would have been better to do things differently. But the fact of the matter was we were where we were at, and we just had to get the job done. There's a lot of belly aching and introspection that occurs, but ultimately you've just got to get things moving.
But are you convinced that that's going to happen now?
I believe so, yeah.
And what gives you that confidence?
Because, because of the decision that the caucus has taken, and you've seen decisions that are being taken by other people, in particular Richard Marles, who's done the right thing, where people just want to basically move on.
Well, but from the Prime Minister, is there any difference you see, any change in tactics, strategy, direction, policy that's going to fix Labor's mess?
Well, I think that's an unfair expectation in your question, unintentionally, I suspect, because we've only had a few. That's what
Labor MPs are expecting.
Well, we've only had a few hours that have passed us by, and I think it's unrealistic to expect for all that to emerge. I think what you've got now is a basis for stability, for us to get on with the job of governing. And as I said, I think in the positions like what I've occupied, and Joel and Janelle, there should be no ambiguity. In the last few days, for instance, I've raised questions about our policy in relation to single parents, and I want to be able to pursue those type of matters without necessarily having question marks over the way in which I'm pursuing things that mean a lot to me. So we need to be able to draw that line, and I think that's been done today.
How do you think voters are viewing Labor, and particularly in your Western Sydney electorate?
Well, I don't think today's endeared us in anyone's minds, but you can't judge us on today. You need to look to tomorrow.
Does that mean that when you say today hasn't endeared us to voters, what are they saying to you? What are your electorate? What's your electorate saying to you?
Well, I think, I'm here in Canberra at the moment, so obviously over the next few weeks I'll have the opportunity to do what I normally do and move around the community. But it doesn't take a master strategist or tactician to work out that in days where you've got this focus on yourself and where there is division, that won't reflect well. But having done that and gone through that, we now need to move on.
What does your electorate think of Julia Gillard as Prime Minister?
I think there is a concern about what is being put on offer by the other side, and in particular in my area. I mean, you can't have a side of politics in the form of the Conservatives promising to do something about cost of living, but then promising to cut the things that help them.
The question is, what do they think of Prime Minister Julia Gillard? Not Tony Abbott. What do they think of Julia Gillard?
Look, I'm not that there is support for what the Prime Minister is doing. I received support today through email from constituents as well.
But not for her personally?
And no, for her personally, I mean, I've received that support today as well.
So people like Julia Gillard in your electorate?
And so, you asked me the question, what type of comment I was getting. I got that today in the forms of emails. And as I said, it's now time for us to move on.
And just on the sole parent pension, which you mentioned earlier, has been a real concern for you, and no doubt is a big concern in your electorate as well. How confident are you, after what you heard in caucus earlier this week and the events of today, that there will be action on this in the lead up to the budget to actually address your concerns about sole parents being so much worse off?
Well, I've had some really productive discussions with Minister Shorten on that issue, and obviously you heard that the Deputy Prime Minister was keen to take on board backbench views in relation to this and the type of things that need to be done. One measure that I felt strongly about was, for instance, changing the work test to allow single parents to be able to work more and not have their payments necessarily affected, and we need to consider that in the mix of things that might be able to assist. So, again, you want to be able to pursue those things without, as I mentioned earlier, a sense of ambiguity or questions about, the policy positions that you're taking.
I'm just going to finish up on this, and I know I just want to go back to something that I may have been harping on, but Kevin Rudd, did you talk to him today and urge him to put up his hand?
I urged, and I said that if he would run, that he would have my support, but ultimately that's his decision. Having done that and having made the decision that he has, I support his decision, but also, and more importantly, the caucus decision that's been taken today.
Would you like to see him playing a stronger role in the election campaign?
Well, I think Kevin does have a valuable role to play, and it would be a mistake for us to not recognise that. He's warmly received wherever he goes, and I think he has a role that he can play, and a positive one, in terms of articulating what this government wants to do. And you've heard it yourself, and I've seen it from my own eyes in my own electorate when he's visited.
Ed Husic, the outgoing government whip, we appreciate your time on what clearly has been a very difficult day for you and for the Labor Party. Appreciate your frank views and thoughts with us tonight.
Thanks, David.
We're going to take a break, then we're going to be back with our panel this evening. We're going to hear both sides of politics and from the press gallery as well about this rather dramatic day in Canberra. Stay with us.